A high school janitor was asked to teach karate as a cruel joke, but what he did next left the entire school speechless. This is the story of how an ordinary man became an unlikely hero. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. Stories like this only happen when you least expect them. The prank. The fluorescent lights of Lincoln High School buzzed overhead as Mike Kowalski pushed his mop across the cafeteria floor. The scent of stale pizza and bleach hung in the air, a familiar combination that had greeted him every morning for the past 6 years. At 58, Mike was a fixture in the school, silent, dependable, and almost invisible. Students rushed past him without a glance, their laughter and chatter filling the space, as if he weren't even there. Mike didn't mind. He had learned long ago that invisibility had its advantages. His hands, rough from years of manual labor, moved methodically, the mop gliding in smooth arcs. A faded tattoo peeked out from under his sleeve, a relic from his youth, a time when he had been someone else entirely. But that was a lifetime ago. Now, he was just Kowalski, the janitor, the guy who fixed leaky faucets, unclogged toilets, and occasionally fished forgotten textbooks out of the dumpster. Across the room, a group of seniors huddled near the vending machines, their voices sharp with laughter. Jason Carter, the de facto leader of Lincoln's so-called elite, leaned against the wall, his Letterman jacket slung over one shoulder. His eyes flicked toward Mike, and a smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. "Hey, Kowalski," Jason called out, his tone dripping with mock respect. "You ever think about switching careers? Maybe something with a little more prestige?" His friend snickered. Mike kept mopping. It wasn't the first time he'd been the butt of their jokes. He had learned to let it roll off his back. Words only had power if you gave it to them. But today, Jason wasn't done. "You know what? I think we've been wasting talent," Jason announced louder now, drawing the attention of nearby students. "Kowalski here looks like he's got some moves. Right, guys?" A few confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jason grinned. "The karate club sensei just quit. We need a replacement. And I say we give Kowalski a shot." Laughter erupted. The karate club was a joke to most of the student body, a ragtag group of misfits who couldn't make the cut for football or basketball. The idea of the quiet, aging janitor leading them was absurd. Mike paused, his grip tightening slightly on the mop handle. He didn't look up. "Come on, man," Jason pressed, stepping closer. "You ever done karate? Or, I don't know, jailhouse brawling?" More laughter. Mike exhaled slowly, then lifted his head. His dark eyes met Jason's, and for a fraction of a second, something flickered in them. Something sharp, dangerous. Then it was gone. Jason faltered, just a little. Before he could say anything else, Principal Harris's voice cut through the noise. "Enough, Carter." The balding, perpetually exhausted administrator strode forward, rubbing his temples like he was already regretting whatever was about to happen. "The karate club needs an instructor. If Mr. Kowalski is willing, we'll give it a trial run." Silence. Jason blinked. "Wait, you're serious?" Principal Harris sighed. "Unless you'd like to volunteer instead?" Jason shut his mouth. All eyes turned to Mike. The janitor stood still, his face unreadable. The students waited for him to decline, to laugh it off, to shuffle away like he always did. Instead, Mike Kowalski gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I start Monday," he said. And just like that, the joke was on them. The first lesson. Monday arrived with a thick tension in the air. Word spread through Lincoln High like wildfire. Kowalski, the janitor, was going to teach karate. The dojo, usually half empty during practice, was packed, but not with eager students. The room buzzed with laughter and whispered bets. $10, says he trips over his own feet. I give him 5 minutes before he quits. Jason leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, phone in hand, ready to capture every humiliating second. The rest of the karate club huddled near the mats, shifting uncomfortably. Emily Reyes, a petite sophomore with a habit of chewing her bottom lip when nervous, gripped the hem of her GI. She had joined the club to escape the relentless bullying about her stutter, not to be part of some cruel joke. The door slid open. Silence fell. Mike stepped inside, but he wasn't the Mike they knew. gone with the baggy custodial clothes. Instead, he wore a crisp white GI, the belt tied in a tight practice knot. His posture was different. Shoulders squared, spine straight, his usual shuffle replaced by a quiet, deliberate stride. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jason snorted. "Look at this. Kowalski's playing dress-up." Mike ignored him. He walked to the center of the dojo and faced the students. His dark eyes scanned the room, lingering on each face just long enough to make them shift in place. "You're here to learn karate," he said, his voice low but firm. "Not to waste my time. So we start now." A few snickers. Mike didn't react. First rule, respect the dojo. Bow when you enter. Bow when you leave. He demonstrated, bending at the waist with precision that seemed impossible for a man they'd only ever seen hauling trash bags. Jason rolled his eyes but gave a mocking half-bow, earning chuckles from his friends. Mike's expression didn't change. Second rule, you listen, you don't talk, you don't complain. "Or what?" Jason challenged, grinning. "You'll mop the floor with us?" The room erupted in laughter. Mike waited for it to die down. Then, without a word, he moved. His footwork was fluid, his hands a blur as he launched into a kata, a formal sequence of strikes, blocks, and steps. Every motion was sharp, controlled, radiating a power that seemed to vibrate through the floor. The students' smiles faded. Even Jason's smirk slipped. This wasn't some half-remembered routine from a gym class. This was real. Mike finished with final stance, his breath steady, his gaze locked onto Jason. The room was dead silent. Then, from the back, someone whispered, "What the hell was that?" Jason recovered first, his bravado rushing back. "Okay, cool. You know some fancy dance moves. But can you actually fight?" Mike tilted his head slightly. "You want spar?" Jason's grin returned. "Yeah, I do." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emily's stomach twisted. She'd seen Jason in fights before. He was fast, ruthless, and loved an audience. Mike simply nodded and stepped onto the mat. Jason bounced on his toes, rolling his shoulders. "Don't cry when I knock you over. Oh, man." Mike said nothing. Jason lunged first, a sloppy but aggressive punch aimed straight for Mike's face. Mike sidestepped. Jason swung again. Mike deflected it with a flick of his wrist, sending Jason stumbling forward. Laughter rose, but it wasn't at Mike anymore. Jason's face flushed. He charged, this time with a wild kick. Mike moved like water, shifting just enough to let Jason's momentum carry him past, then catching his wrist in a grip that looked effortless. With a twist, Jason was on his knees, his arm locked in a position that made him gasp. The room held its breath. Mike leaned down, his voice barely above a whisper. "Karate isn't about fighting. It's about control. You have none." Then he released him. Jason scrambled back, rubbing his wrist, his bravado shattered. The other students stared at Mike, like they were seeing him for the first time. Emily's hands trembled. For the first time in months, she didn't feel afraid. Mike straightened his GI. "Tomorrow we train seriously. If you show up, you follow the rules. If not, don't waste my time." He turned and walked out, leaving the dojo in stunned silence. Jason was the first to speak. "This isn't over," he muttered, but there was no fire behind it. Emily watched the door long after Mike had left. Something had changed, and she couldn't wait to find out what happened next. The ripple effect. The next morning, the halls of Lincoln High buzzed with whispers. "Did you see Kowalski? Dude moved like a freaking ninja." Jason got owned by the janitor. Best thing I've ever seen. Mike went about his usual routine, scrubbing graffiti off lockers, replacing broken ceiling tiles. But now, students stepped aside when he passed. Some even nodded at him, a newfound respect in their eyes. He didn't acknowledge it. He just kept working. Meanwhile, the karate club's attendance had tripled. The dojo was packed, not with hecklers this time, but with curious students. Even kids who'd never thrown a punch in their lives showed up, drawn by rumors of the janitor who could dismantle a bully with one hand. Emily stood near the front, her GI neatly pressed, her heart pounding. She'd spent the night practicing the bow Mike had demonstrated, determined to get it right. Jason wasn't there. Mike entered, and the room fell silent. He didn't react to the crowd. He simply walked to the front, knelt, and bowed to the dojo. Then he stood and faced them. "Karate is discipline," he said. "Not just for your body, for your mind." He began with the basics. Stances, breathing, how to make a proper fist. No flashy moves, no theatrics, just fundamentals. Some of the students grumbled, expecting something more exciting, but Mike didn't care. "Again," he said when their punches sagged. "Again," when their stances wobbled. Emily struggled. Her arms burned and her legs shook, but she refused to quit. For the first time in months, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Then the door slammed open. Jason strode in, flanked by two of his football buddies. His wrist was wrapped, a silent admission of yesterday's defeat. "Sorry I'm late," he said, voice dripping with false cheer. "Had to ice my hand after someone nearly broke it." A few nervous laughs. Mike didn't react. Jason smirked and sauntered to the front, deliberately stepping on the edge of Emily's mat. She flinched but didn't move. Mike's gaze flicked to her, then back to Jason. "You're interrupting." Jason shrugged. "Just here to learn, Sensei." The title was a mockery. Mike held his stare for a long moment. Then, without breaking eye contact, he said, "Emily, show me your front stance." Emily's breath hitched. All eyes turned to her. Her face burned, but she stepped forward, feet shoulder-width apart, knees bent. "Good," Mike said. "Now elbow strike." She obeyed, her movement shaky but precise. Jason snorted. "What is this, kitty class?" Mike ignored him. "Again, Emily." She did it again. And again. Each time, her strike grew stronger. Jason rolled his eyes and turned to leave. "Jason," Mike said. He paused. "Your turn." A beat of silence. Then laughter from Jason's friends. Jason turned back, grinning. "Oh, this should be good." Mike pointed to the spot beside Emily. "Front stance." Jason's grin faltered. He hesitated, then took the position. Sloppy, half-hearted. "Lower," Mike said. Jason scowled but adjusted. "Elbow strike." Jason threw one, putting all his weight into it, overextending. Mike shook his head. Again, controlled. Jason's jaw tightened. He shot a glare at Emily, who was watching him with wide eyes. Something in her expression, not fear, not anymore, but something like pity, made his face darken. He threw another strike, harder this time, his control slipping. Mike stepped in, catching his arm. "You're angry. That makes you weak." Jason wrenched free. "I'm not weak." Mike didn't argue. He just said, "Prove it. Again." Jason's breath came fast now, his face red. He threw another strike, then another, each one wilder than the last. Mike deflected them effortlessly. The room watched in stunned silence. Finally, Jason stopped, chest heaving, his fists clenched. Mike studied him for a long moment. Then quietly, he said, "You have power, but no control. That's why you lost." Jason's expression twisted. For a second, Emily thought he might swing at Mike. Instead, he turned and stormed out, his friends scrambling after him. The dojo exhaled. Mike didn't react. He simply turned back to the class. Again, from the top, Emily took her stance, her hands steady now, and for the first time, she didn't feel sorry for Jason. She felt sorry for anyone who underestimated Mike Kowalski, the shadow of the past. The following week, the karate club had transformed. What began as a cruel joke had become the most talked-about activity at Lincoln High. Students who had never shown interest in martial arts now lined up outside the dojo, eager to train under the mysterious janitor who moved like a seasoned warrior. Even teachers whispered in the halls, stealing glances at Mike as he mopped floors with the same quiet precision he used to teach karate. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Jason hadn't returned to the dojo since his humiliation. He stalked the halls like a caged animal, his usual swagger replaced by a simmering rage. His friends gave him a wide berth, and even the teachers avoided calling on him in class. The few times he crossed paths with Mike, he glared but said nothing, which Emily thought, was somehow worse than his usual taunts. Then the announcement came. Principal Harris gathered the karate club after school, his expression grim. "The regional tournament is in 3 weeks," he said. "If we don't place in the top 3, the school board is cutting our funding." A murmur of panic rippled through the students. The tournament was a big deal. Schools from across the state would compete, many with professional coaches and years of training. Lincoln High's ragtag team didn't stand a chance. Emily's stomach twisted. The club was the only place she'd ever felt safe. Losing it would mean returning to the hallways where Jason and his friends ruled, where her stutter made her a target. She glanced at Mike. His face was unreadable. "We need a miracle," one student muttered. Jason, leaning against the back wall with his arms crossed, smirked. "Or a real instructor." The room fell silent. Mike didn't rise to the bait. He simply looked at Principal Harris and said, "We'll compete." The students stared at him. Even Jason looked surprised. "You can't be serious," Jason said. "We'll get destroyed." Mike turned to him. "Then train harder." Jason's jaw tightened, but for once, he didn't argue. Training intensified. Mike drilled him relentlessly. Stances, strikes, breath control. No flashy moves, no wasted energy. Just precision. Emily threw herself into it, her muscles aching, her palms raw from hours of practice. She didn't care. For the first time in her life, she felt strong. Then, one afternoon, a stranger walked into the dojo, tall, broad-shouldered, with a neatly trimmed beard and a black GI. The man stood in the doorway like he owned the place. The students froze mid-drill, sensing the shift in the air. Mike went very still. Well, the man said, his voice smooth and mocking. "Mike Kowalski, I heard you were teaching kids these days, but I didn't believe it." Mike's expression didn't change, but Emily saw the way his hands curled slightly at his sides. "Coach Reynolds," he said evenly. Recognition flashed through the room. Daniel Reynolds was a legend, head coach of the defending regional champions, Westridge High. His team had won the tournament 3 years running. Reynolds smirked. "Still cleaning floors, I see." Mike didn't respond. Reynolds stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the students. "I just wanted to see the legendary Kowalski in action. But this," he chuckled. "You're wasting their time, Mike. They'll never be ready." Emily's fists clenched. Mike's voice was quiet. "Get to your point." Reynolds' smile faded. "My point? You shouldn't be here. Not after what you did." A ripple of confusion. Mike's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Jason stepped forward. "What's he talking about, Kowalski?" Reynolds laughed. "He didn't tell you? Mike here was one of the best fighters in the state. Until he threw a match for money. Got himself banned. Real honorable, right?" The room erupted in whispers. Emily's breath caught. She looked at Mike, searching for denial, for anger, anything. But his face was a mask. Jason's eyes lit up with vindication. "So you're a fraud." Mike finally moved, stepping toward Reynolds. "Leave." Reynolds held up his hands, still grinning. "Just giving your students the truth. Wouldn't want them following a coward." Then he turned and walked out, leaving the dojo in stunned silence. Emily's heart pounded. She wanted to say something to defend Mike, but the words stuck in her throat. Mike didn't look at any of them. He just picked up his bag and walked out without a word. The students exchanged uneasy glances. Jason was the first to speak. "I told you he was a joke." Emily whirled on him. "Shut up, Jason." The room gasped. She'd never spoken back to him before. Jason's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Emily swallowed hard, but she didn't back down. "I said, shut up. You don't know anything about him." For a second, Jason looked genuinely shocked. Then his face darkened. "You'll regret that." He shoved past her and stormed out. The other students drifted away, leaving Emily alone in the dojo. She sank to her knees, her hands shaking. Everything was falling apart, and she had no idea how to fix it. The legacy. The next morning, the school felt different. Whispers followed Mike as he walked the halls. Fraud, coward, cheater, but he didn't react. He kept his head down, mopping floors, emptying trash cans, as if nothing had changed. But the karate club's dojo remained empty. No students showed up, not even Emily. Jason, meanwhile, reveled in the chaos. He held court in the cafeteria, recounting Reynolds' revelations with dramatic flair. Kowalski's a washed-up loser who sold out, he announced, grinning as his friends laughed. And now he thinks he can teach us? Emily sat alone at a nearby table, her fists clenched under the table. She wanted to scream, to tell them they were wrong, but the words tangled in her throat, trapped by the same stutter that had haunted her for years. Then, the announcement came over the PA system. All karate club members, report to the gymnasium immediately. The gym was dim, the bleachers empty except for Principal Harris, who stood near the podium with a frown. Mike waited at the center of the basketball court, still in his janitor's clothes. Only a handful of students trickled in, mostly the quieter kids who joined after seeing Mike's skill. Jason wasn't among them. Principal Harris cleared his throat. The tournament is in 1 week. If you're withdrawing, now's the time. No one moved. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. We're not withdrawing. Mike looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Principal Harris sighed. Then who's leading you? Because Coach Reynolds made it clear. I am. The doors at the back of the gym swung open. Jason stood there, his GI wrinkled, his face uncharacteristically serious. Silence. Then laughter erupted from his friends. Dude, what the hell? One called out. Jason ignored them. He walked to the front, stopping a few feet from Mike. For a long moment, the two just stared at each other. Then Jason bowed. The room went dead silent. Mike didn't move. Jason straightened, his voice low. I looked you up last night. Kyokushin Regional Finals. 20 years ago. You were winning. Then you took a dive in the 3rd round. He paused. But the guy you lost to? Daniel Reynolds. A murmur rippled through the gym. Emily's breath caught. Mike's expression didn't change, but his shoulders tensed. Jason continued, louder now. Reynolds has been talking trash about you for years. But here's the thing. I watched the footage. That fight was fixed. All right. Just not by you. Mike's jaw tightened. Jason smirked. Reynolds paid off the ref. You took the fall because your brother was in debt, and he threatened him. The room erupted in gasps. Emily's eyes burned. Suddenly, it all made sense. Mike's silence, his refusal to defend himself. Principal Harris looked stunned. Is this true? Mike didn't answer. He didn't need to. Jason crossed his arms. So here's the deal. We're going to that tournament, and we're going to wipe the floor with Reynolds' team. A beat of silence. Then, one by one, the other students stepped forward, forming a line behind Jason. Emily was the first to bow. Mike exhaled, long and slow. Then, for the first time since he'd arrived at Lincoln High, he smiled. Then we train, he said. 1 week later, the tournament hall was packed, the air thick with the scent of sweat and adrenaline. Westridge High's team dominated the center mat, their movements sharp, their confidence unshakable. Coach Reynolds smirked from the sidelines, his arms crossed. Then Lincoln High walked in. Mike led them, no longer in his janitor's uniform, but in a crisp black GI. Behind him, Jason, Emily, and the rest of the team moved with a quiet confidence that turned heads. Reynolds' smile faded. The matches began. One by one, Lincoln students fought, not with brute force, but with precision, with control. Emily, who'd once been too afraid to speak, won her match with a flawless kata. Jason, who'd relied on anger for years, disarmed his opponent with a technique Mike had drilled into him. Then came the final match. The crowd fell silent as Mike stepped onto the mat, not as a coach, but as a competitor. The officials had allowed it after reviewing the evidence against Reynolds. His opponent? Daniel Reynolds himself. The two men faced each other, 20 years of history hanging between them. The bell rang. Reynolds struck first, fast and vicious. Mike blocked, countering with a sweep that sent Reynolds stumbling. The crowd roared. It wasn't a fight. It was a reckoning. Move for move, Mike mirrored Reynolds' own style back at him. Every dirty trick, every underhanded tactic, turned against him with flawless precision. In the final seconds, Mike feinted left, then struck right. A single perfect punch that stopped just shy of Reynolds' nose. The room held its breath. Mike lowered his fist. "That's control," he said quietly. The bell rang. Lincoln High won the tournament. Epilogue. The school board reinstated the karate club's funding. Jason became its co-captain. Emily finally gave a speech without stuttering. And Mike Kowalski? He still mopped the floors. But now, when students passed him, they bowed. And he bowed back. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that heroes come in all forms. And remember, sometimes the quietest people have the loudest impact. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories that prove ordinary people can do extraordinary things.